When you are that far away from home and you're out of contact with your family, it is our job, it is my job to bring that touch of home back to you and to let you know that I noticed.
This is 50th Street.
You're listening to an American Red Cross in Greater New York podcast. Hello, everyone. This is Michael DeVolpierre, Communications Officer with the American Red Cross in Greater New York. For the past few months, we've been highlighting many of the different ways COVID-19 has affected families across our region and how we at the Red Cross have adapted our work to address these new challenges. Today, we will discuss the difficulties that the pandemic has placed on our nation's military communities. For nearly 140 years, the American Red Cross has been there for active and retired service members and their families at every stage of military service. This Red Cross program goes by the name of Service to the Armed Forces, or SAF. The work of our SAF program takes many different forms in communities and military installations across the U.S. and on bases all over the world. In Greater New York, we have an incredible team of volunteers and employees who support this program in person and virtually. Since COVID-19 began to upend lives all over the world, the Red Cross has been working around the clock to address new challenges for service members, veterans, and their families. These include health concerns, longer periods of time away from loved ones, increased isolation, and added uncertainty. In this next episode of our podcast, I'll be sharing my conversation with Red Cross team member Katherine Jones, who coordinates the delivery of Red Cross services at Yokoda Air Base outside of Tokyo, Japan, where she's worked for more than 2 years. Prior to that, she served with the Red Cross on overseas bases in Italy, Germany, and Iraq. She's also worked at multiple military installations here in the U.S. In our conversation, we discuss the many different ways she and her team support service members overseas 24/7, 365 days a year. And she also discusses her unique history with the Red Cross and her commitment to service. Good morning.
Good morning, or
good evening for you. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. What time is it over there where you are?
It is 9 p.m. on Thursday night.
Where are you exactly?
I am located at Yokoda Air Base outside of Tokyo, Japan. My position oversees all of our operations within Japan, mainland Japan, Okinawa, and the Korean Peninsula.
How long have you been in your role in Japan?
So I moved to Japan just over 2 years ago. It was 2 years in April. And prior to that, I was what we called at the time senior station manager in Vicenza, Italy for a year and a half.
What brought you to this work? Were you with the Red Cross prior in the U.S. and then maybe in a different line of service?
So I'm a Red Cross child. My mother was a Red Cross disaster volunteer. I think a lot of us started out at the hands of our parents. She was a disaster volunteer in North Texas. I actually have a certificate in my office from my first disaster operation when I was 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
I went and helped with one of the shelters that she was opening after an ice storm. And that was my first experience as a Red Cross youth volunteer at that point. And it just kind of came into my blood. My own father was in the National Guard and retired whenever I was younger. And so it seemed like a really good fit. And Saturday on Halloween will be 15 years for me since coming to SAF.
Is there something that people don't understand, even people within the Red Cross don't understand or should know about the work that the Red Cross does where you are?
I think most often when I'm talking to people about what we do, they are surprised by how much it is. I teach disaster. I teach health and safety. We partner with Armed Forces blood programs to do blood drives overseas. We do sheltering. We do emergency communications, briefings, preparedness education, everything that your local Red Cross does with their staff of 20, 30 people, our Red Cross does on a military installation with a staff of 1 or 2.
I understand that you're at the ready for pretty long hours, for an extended periods of time. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So usually when people ask me, to describe my day or what the schedule looks like, I ask them to pick a day because every day is different. So it really is, being service to the armed forces staff members, there is an expectation that we are 24/7 staff members, 365, and that we will go when called, where called, without any questions. And many of us take that to a personal level of really feeling like this is our calling. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And that is part of what makes those long days doable. There's no rest sometimes. You think you're going to get 8 hours, you actually get 3, and you go in and you do the job. And that's what we're here for. And it's what we all take great pride in being able to show up and make sure that we can continue to do those services for the community.
Talk a little bit about some of those critical challenges and critical needs related to COVID that you're seeing on base.
A lot of what we're seeing, a lot of what we are being asked for in terms of support is around helping to provide resiliency education. It is around helping to provide day-to-day items, comfort items. All of the service members and family members, DoD civilians, contractors that come into both Japan and Korea are required to do what's called a restriction of movement for 14 days after they land. Many of the families in particular are not really prepared for that. It is really a different kind of significant strain. If you are a single service member or civilian coming in, you're put into a barracks type situation. And in a few of our locations, you essentially are in your room for 20 hours a day and you get some allotted, outside time. It's very, very restrictive. It's there to protect the force. It's there to honor our host nation's request. But imagine sitting in your office space, a room about the size of your office, for 20 to 22 hours a day, and that's your world for the next 2 weeks. Very unlike a lot of the quarantines that you might be seeing, like in the United States, where people are still able to, go out and walk around the neighborhood, socially distance, take precautions, maybe go to the grocery store. These folks aren't allowed to do that, and so at many of our locations, we are partnering with community members, with spouse organizations, with the chaplains, the USO, military and family life consultants, and just community members to do things like drop off toiletries, drop off word games for the kids, reading materials, help to facilitate getting necessary items, comfort items or hygiene items. Some of the individuals end up being quarantined without a lot of notice.
Now we have the holidays quickly approaching. Are there service members that would normally be able to go home that aren't going to be able to do so?
In Japan, and Korea is similar. If you leave to go back to the United States to, let's say, see your family, then you are automatically going to be quarantined again when you get back. So that's adding on additional time away from your duties, from your work, and being back in that really restrictive environment. And so that is an area right now where many families would be looking at traveling home over the holidays, being able to spend some time to decompress, and that's just not an option. It's just not an option for folks right now. And so particularly for our single service members who don't have a husband or a wife and children here, don't have a significant other to kind of spend and share that time with, this is going to be a really isolating season for them.
How have we, the Red Cross, stepped in to address some of these emotional concerns since COVID?
One of the things that has been most exciting for me, and exciting is probably not a great word considering the circumstance, but we have this wonderful program called Reconnection Workshops, Mind Body Modules that we offer through Service to the Armed Forces. It's a free program. It has multiple modules, everything from communicating clearly to communicating with your children. There are child modules. very early on, in I want to say May timeframe, our folks at national headquarters put together a specific virtual COVID module. And we got really great response to that. We were able to start pushing it out worldwide, and it's led by licensed clinicians. So people are really having a chance to engage with mental health providers in a safe and non-threatening way. Some of the feedback that we've gotten here in Asia Pacific Division, because we have managed it a little bit differently, instead of having it be specific to each location, we've opened it up to all of our locations. So they all push it out to their communities at the same time. And we may have a spouse on there from South Korea who is on there with an active duty member from Okinawa, who's on there with a civilian from Yokoda. And they're all able to kind of come together and process this new environment and new world and these stressors in a different way, and at the same time feel united by the fact that they're all living with this in this strange overseas environment, away from their families, away from the normal things that might make it a little bit easier. Even things like food delivery, that's not a thing here. It doesn't happen in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So just being able to bond over those things and then learn some of those concrete skills with a licensed clinician has been really helpful. And then we also have a moderator on the call that kind of watches the chats. And so if we notice that someone is having a stronger emotional reaction or has maybe been triggered by something, we're able to take that person off into a side room with a separate facilitator, so they can have that one-on-one support that they need. And having the ability to do that, particularly in this military environment, has been it's been life-changing for people, because they have not been able to connect in the same way, with services kind of being put on a halt. When COVID first came out, it impacted everything, and for the military, it stopped a lot of our movements. So mental health providers that we were expecting to come into locations on just kind of their normal rotation suddenly couldn't get here. And so this has been a great way for the American Red Cross to be able to step up and really assist in bridging that gap for folks.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things that just got released about 4 weeks ago, is we've started expanding those modules to include some of our other workshops, so that now that people are starting to move into this new normal, this new reality, a lot of the normal stressors are coming back as well. And some new additional stressors. Many of our locations just now moved back from a completely virtual format for school. Many of the childcare locations have been shut down or severely limited. And so you have service members, single parents, dual service members who are having to try to juggle that mission critical job with childcare, with teaching their kids, with worrying about parents who are in that increased risk category back in the United States. And so having the ability to offer some of these other modules that can teach just some stress solutions is one of them, on how to manage that ongoing day-to-day stress.
When you look back at your work so far in Japan or in Italy, or maybe your broader Red Cross work, is there a story that comes to mind that always comes back to you, that you think illustrates the importance of the work that you've been doing and that the Red Cross has been doing for service members?
There is the one that so on my last deployment to Iraq, there was this young service member who is a private that would come into our office every single morning. Before the workday, I worked an overnight shift, so he would usually be in there between 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning. And our office was located, I don't know, maybe 600 yards from the dining facility, where you could get pretty much anything you wanted for breakfast. Like made to order eggs or hot things, pastries, anything. But he would always come into our office and take our little bitty cardboard Red Cross cups. I don't know if you know the ones I'm talking about. They're about 6 ounces. And a packet of instant oatmeal off of our shelf because we kept like snack foods for everyone. And that was his breakfast. And one day I just asked him and said, dude, what's so special about my brown sugar oatmeal? Like, you could have pancakes and waffles and all of this, but every day you come in here for my like mediocre coffee and brown sugar oatmeal. What's the deal? And he looked at me and he said, because I know if I don't come in here, then you'll notice. And I don't have anyone else that will notice if I don't show up. And for me, that's why I'm here. Because sometimes people just need someone to notice. Sometimes people just need to know that there is a Red Crosser there that will show up for them and will be there for them and provide mediocre coffee and brown sugar oatmeal or toothpaste or baby formula if they're in a COVID quarantine barracks, or we passed out, little Easter goodie bags for the kids that were there over Easter, whatever it is. When you are that far away from home and you're out of contact with your family, it is our job, it is my job to bring that touch of home back to you and to let you know that I noticed. Sorry.
That's a beautiful story. And I find it incredibly touching, and you really exemplify the work that the Red Cross does all over the world. Now you're deployed with your 2 kids. You said you had, and how old did you say they were?
Noah is 8 and Amelia is 6, almost 7.
You being deployed, you can also be the beneficiary of some of these services as well. Is that?
We can be. So, yeah, my children and we moved overseas when my daughter was 4 months old and my son was not yet 2. So, this is all they've known is living overseas. They have a very different kind of perspective. They really are third culture kids. Yeah. And this is the third country that they've lived in outside of the United States. And so that definitely, like many military kids, they're kind of creating their own culture and their own identity. The
cute little dog.
Might have been one of them. In terms of programs that they take advantage of here, that they're able to be involved in, they have both done the preparedness programs, Prepare with Pedro, and has done Pillowcase Project. Amelia's not quite old enough yet, but Noah was old enough this year. Both of them are involved in Scouts. I'm also a volunteer Scout leader, and so one of the things that was super fun last year that really helped to help Noah to kind of understand some of what Mom's job was is I was able to go in and actually teach basic first aid to his Scout den. And suddenly, like, the light bulb went off in his little, at that time, 7-year-old brain. It's like, oh, this is what Mommy does. So, and then this year, working on the fires, all of that happened during our fire prevention week here on base. And so Noah was learning at school and with the fire department about different types of fires and what happens if you get evacuated from a fire. And, they'll come in and they'll ask, they're like, Mommy, why are you having to work so late again? Are you on another call? Because I do keep really odd hours because of our work. But this has been a great way to really help bring it home and explain for them something tangible that mommy does that can help them understand.
And what you're doing, your mother was doing. So do you see yourself in that situation and bringing your Red Cross passion and knowledge back down to your children like your mother did for you?
I do. the kids come with me every chance that they get. And particularly now during COVID, I think they've seen my office about as much as they've seen their house at this point. They have a whole little section set up over in the side so that whenever I take them in, I can just put them in the corner of my office and they work on their homework or whatever is necessary. But, the kids talk about ways that they can volunteer and do things, and they will, each of them has a share bank, and Noah this last year decided that his share bank that he saves from the money he earns and Tooth Fairy and things like that, that the share portion, he wanted to give it to the local Red Cross here. So we went and bought snacks for the COVID quarantine out of his share bank, and then gave it to the local Red Cross manager here. And so I think that they see that and are growing up with kind of that heart of service too. And, my mother was a therapist. My father was a teacher. And I grew up in service. My mom, like I said, was a Red Cross volunteer, and I hope that I'm passing that legacy on to my next little generation here.
Well, it looks like you are. I really appreciated the time to talk to you. Thank you for sharing all your incredible work. And thank you for everything you do.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. It's been really nice.
Thank you so much to Katherine for taking the time to talk to me. And I also want to offer my deepest gratitude to all who serve. This episode was edited and produced by me, Michael DeVolpierre. Thank you so much for listening. Let's continue to look out for one another.